They say you should read the fine print before signing anything. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes the fine print sneaks up on you years later and tries to ruin your life. I learned that the hard way, when a smirking HOA representative showed up on my porch, clipboard in hand, demanding I pay $1,200 in fines. The catch? I wasn't even part of their HOA. Let me back up a little. My dog, Tucker, and I had been living in our charming, slightly run-down ranch-style home for 3 years. It wasn't much, but it had a big backyard, 0 rules about what color I could paint my mailbox. And, most importantly, it was HOA-free, or so I thought. That illusion shattered on a sunny Saturday morning. Tucker was stretched out on the porch, chewing on a tennis ball, when I heard the sound of heels clacking on the driveway. "Excuse me," came a nasal, overly authoritative voice. I looked up to see a woman in a blazer that screamed power trip, and a clipboard so shiny it might as well have been a weapon. "Hi," I said cautiously. Tucker gave her a side-eye growl, which immediately earned him a death glare. "Is this your dog?" she asked, pointing at Tucker like he was a graffiti artist caught red-handed. "Yes," I replied, standing up. "Can I help you?" She flipped through the pages on her clipboard with the kind of vigor you'd expect from someone trying to one-up a contestant on Jeopardy! "According to our records, you are in violation of HOA Bylaw 13B, which prohibits dogs over 30 pounds, she announced with all the joy of a dentist telling you need a root canal. "HOA bylaw?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'm not even part of your HOA." She pursed her lips and smiled in a way that made it clear she didn't care about trivial things like facts. "Well, actually, this entire neighborhood falls under our jurisdiction as of 2 years ago, thanks to an annexation vote. You should have received a notice in the mail." "Oh, you mean the same mail that occasionally delivers pizza coupons and credit card offers?" "Must have slipped right past me," I said, matching her fake smile with my own. She ignored my sarcasm. "Regardless, you're now part of the HOA, and that means you're subject to our rules. Tucker here," she wrinkled her nose as if his name was offensive, "is in violation, and you've also accrued $1,200 in fines for failure to comply. $1,200. For what?" I demanded. "For refusing to remove the dog and for not paying the initial fine." "So let me get this straight," I said, folding my arms. "You retroactively enrolled me in an HOA without my knowledge, banned my dog for existing, and now you want me to cough up over $1,000 because I didn't play along with rules I never agreed to?" "Exactly," she chirped, as if I just handed her a bouquet of compliments. "That's not how this works," I said. "I'm not paying you a dime." Her smile faltered, and she leaned in slightly, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "If you don't pay, we'll escalate this matter to legal action. It's really in your best interest to comply." "Oh, I'm sure it is," I replied. "But I'm also pretty sure what you're doing is borderline illegal." She straightened up, clearly not expecting me to push back. "I'll make a note of your non-compliance," she said, scribbling furiously on her clipboard. "Yeah, you do that," I said, stepping back inside and slamming the door behind me. I thought that would be the end of it, but oh, how wrong I was. By the next week, I had received 3 more notices in the mail, each more threatening than the last. Tucker, meanwhile, continued to violate their precious bylaw by doing outrageous things like wagging his tail and existing. Things came to a head when I found a bright orange, "Final warning," sticker slapped onto my front door. "Oh, that's cute," I muttered, peeling it off. Tucker barked in agreement. I knew it was time to fight back. The question was, how? I stared at the fluorescent orange warning notice for a good 5 seconds before tossing it onto my kitchen counter. It joined the growing pile of HOA love letters, which I'd been saving for 2 reasons: evidence and bonfire fuel. Tucker sat at my feet, panting happily. "They've got another thing coming if they think we're going anywhere," I told him. He wagged his tail, blissfully unaware of the clipboard mafia lurking in the neighborhood. It was time to do some digging. If these people wanted a war, I wasn't going in unarmed. So my step 1 was, know your enemy. I grabbed my laptop and Googled the name of the HOA listed on all the notices. Maple Ridge Community Association. Their website was as smug as I'd expected. Pictures of meticulously landscaped lawns, beige cookie-cutter houses, and smiling families who looked like they spent more time modeling for stock photos than living actual lives. The leadership section showcased a lineup of stern-faced middle-aged people, including a familiar one, Karen from Clipboard. Real name? Margaret Jennings, president. Oh, you're the president, huh? I muttered. Makes sense. You look like the kind of person who'd use her power to ban fun. Her bio boasted about her commitment to upholding community standards and ensuring compliance for the greater good. Translation: professional busybody with too much time on her hands. Scrolling further, I found their bylaws. Oh boy, was this a goldmine. Rules about everything from grass height to approved shades of beige for house exteriors. And, of course, there it was, 13B, the dog ban. But here's where it got interesting. Right at the bottom of the page was a tiny disclaimer. Membership is mandatory only for properties purchased after the HOA's formation date in January 2021. That was 2 years after I'd bought my house. My jaw actually dropped. Oh, Margaret, you've really done it now, I said, grinning. The next day, I visited City Hall. It turns out the HOA hadn't technically annexed my property. They just decided to extend their boundaries and hoped I'd roll over like a well-trained puppy. Armed with copies of property records and the HOA's own bylaws, I returned home feeling victorious. But the fight wasn't over yet. I needed witnesses. That evening, I walked over to my neighbor Clara's house. She was a retired schoolteacher with a passion for gardening and a well-known disdain for the HOA. When I told her about the fines and the dog ban, she shook her head so hard her glasses almost fell off. Those people think they own this neighborhood, she said. But they don't. I've been here 20 years, and I'll be damned if some clipboard-wielding tyrant tells me what to do. That makes 2 of us, I said. Do you know anyone else who's had issues with them? Oh, honey, she said, lowering her voice. You have no idea. She handed me a list of names, neighbors who'd been harassed, fined, or otherwise bullied by the HOA. Armed with this information, I decided it was time for a little community meeting. The next weekend, I hosted an impromptu HOA support group in my backyard. It was a mix of angry homeowners and curious onlookers, all eager to share their stories. I got fined $200 for having a garden gnome, one man said, shaking his head. They told me I couldn't park my truck in my own driveway because it wasn't aesthetically pleasing, another neighbor added. And don't get me started on the mailbox inspections, Clara chimed in. By the time everyone had vented, we had a clear picture of the HOA's pattern: intimidation, overreach, and, in some cases, outright lies. Here's the deal, I said, standing in front of the group. These people are bullies, but bullies rely on fear. If we stand up to them together, they'll back down. Clara raised her glass of lemonade. To taking down the HO. The group cheered, and I felt a surge of hope. This wasn't just about me or Tucker anymore. This was about all of us reclaiming our rights. Of course, Margaret Jennings wasn't going to take this lying down. 2 days later, a fresh notice arrived. This one stamped with the words, "Immediate legal action pending." Oh, you're escalating this? Cute, I said, holding it up for Tucker to see. He barked, clearly unimpressed. But this time, the letter included something new. A warning that my illegal dog was now subject to removal if I didn't comply within 14 days. You're going to take my dog? I said aloud. Good luck with that. I called Clara and the other neighbors. It's time to fight back, I told them. I stared at the latest threat letter, debating whether to frame it as a trophy or use it to line Tucker's crate. Margaret had officially crossed the line. Removal of my dog? Oh, honey, no. I wasn't just angry. I was inspired. Time to turn up the heat. I started by calling a local attorney, a guy named Dean who came highly recommended by Clara. Dean's voice was slow and deliberate, like he didn't mind charging by the hour. So, let me get this straight, Dean said after I explained everything. They annexed your property without your consent, banned your dog, and are threatening to remove him? That's the gist of it. He let out a long, low whistle. They're bluffing about the dog. But the fines? That's straight-up extortion. Good. Then I can fight this. Oh, you can fight it, he said, chuckling. And you've got a solid case. Send me all the documents you've got, and we'll make them wish they'd stayed in their beige houses. I grinned. Tucker wagged his tail as if he knew the cavalry was on the way. The next move was a little unorthodox, but desperate times call for petty measures. I made flyers, bright yellow ones with bold letters that read, "Is your HOA abusing its power? Share your story." I included a burner email address and stapled those bad boys to every telephone pole in the neighborhood. By the next morning, my inbox was flooded. Stories of ridiculous fines, bullying, and more garden gnome drama than I thought possible. One email stood out. A former HOA board member who wanted to remain anonymous. "Let's call him Tim. Margaret runs the HOA like a dictator," Tim wrote. "She bends the rules to target people she doesn't like, and the fines go straight into a general fund with zero transparency. I left because I couldn't deal with the corruption. Oh, Margaret, you were making this way too easy." Armed with Tim's insider info, I reached out to the local newspaper. The reporter I spoke to, Kelly, sounded intrigued as soon as I mentioned HOA abuses. "People love stories like this," she said, "but we'll need more than just your word. Can you get me some evidence?" "Already on it," I said, sending her a folder of the threatening letters, the HOA's shady bylaws, and screenshots of emails from other homeowners. Kelly promised to look into it, and I hung up feeling like I just lit a fuse. A few days later, Margaret showed up on my porch again, this time flanked by 2 other board members. Tucker greeted them with a low growl, which I didn't bother to discourage. "Mr. Carter," Margaret began, her voice dripping with condescension, "we've noticed your recent activities. Posting flyers, spreading misinformation. It's not helping your case." "My case? Oh, you mean the case where you're trying to scam me out of $1,200 and steal my dog? That case?" I asked, leaning casually against the doorframe. Her nostrils flared. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "I'm just getting started," I said with a grin. She thrust a new piece of paper at me. "This is your official eviction notice." "Eviction? You don't even own my house," I said, laughing. "It's a lien," she snapped. "We've filed it with the county." "Oh, that's adorable," I said, taking the paper and pretending to inspect it. "You know what else is adorable? Fraudulent liens. My lawyer's going to love this." Margaret's composure cracked for just a second. "We'll see about that," she said before turning on her heel and stomping away, clipboard in hand. The next morning, the story hit the newspaper. Local HOA accused of overreach, harassment. Kelly didn't hold back. The article included quotes from me, other neighbors, and even Tim, who remained anonymous. It painted a clear picture of an HOA drunk on power, with Margaret at the helm. The fallout was immediate. My phone buzzed nonstop with texts from neighbors, cheering me on. Clara brought over a pie, declaring, "This is for you and Tucker, our neighborhood heroes." A week later, I got a call from Dean. "Margaret's lawyer just reached out," he said. "They're offering to drop the fines and rescind the dog ban if you agree to stop your campaign." I laughed so hard I almost dropped my phone. "Oh no, we're not stopping until Margaret's clipboard is in the trash." Dean chuckled. "That's the spirit." By now, the HOA board was in full meltdown. 2 members had resigned, citing irreconcilable differences, and rumors swirled that Margaret was under investigation for misusing funds. The final showdown came at the next HOA meeting, which I attended purely for the drama. The room was packed with angry homeowners, many of whom I'd never seen before. Margaret sat at the front, looking like she'd aged 10 years in a month. As the meeting started, one homeowner stood up and said, "I move to vote for Margaret's removal as president." The room erupted in cheers. Margaret tried to argue, but her voice was drowned out by chants of "Vote! Vote! Vote!" The vote wasn't even close. Margaret was out, and by the end of the night, so was the dog ban. Tucker and I celebrated with a long walk around the neighborhood, free of harassment. Clara called it a victory for the little guy. As for Margaret, last I heard, she sold her house and moved to another neighborhood. Hopefully one without an HOA, because I'm pretty sure her clipboard days are over. To anyone who tries to pull this nonsense again, bring it on. Tucker and I are ready.